Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask the Experts. Today we'll be covering the Hub topics. And again, this is similar to our prior forums where we go ahead and talk about anything you want to talk about, but today our focus is the Hub. For today's discussion, you're going to have myself, Liz Colon. I'm a Senior Education Consultant here at FranConnect, and you'll also have Sherry here, who will be moderating the session. She's our Director of Education Services. Again, you can ask anything that you like. There are a couple of options by which you can ask. You can ask via the chat window. It appears in your toolbar like a little message bubble, kind of something you might see on a comic strip. Or you can raise your hand. Raising your hand will allow us to unmute you here on the line so that we can go ahead and speak with you audibly here on the call, and we can hear your question and respond in real time. Either way, we'll respond to all questions that come on the line today. If at any point there's a question we need to take offline or we may need to follow up with you on, we will let the audience know that we'll come back to that question at another time. Okay, so I am going to cover today the most common question I get when we talk about the Hub, which is how do I increase Hub adoption? And so I have a couple of things I talk to my franchisors about when we discuss Hub adoption. And so we're going to start our lesson today with that, and then we'll open the floor up for questions. Again, it can be any question from any module. Today's focus is the Hub. If during the week after this lesson you decide that you have some questions or think of something we didn't cover here during our session today, please feel free to email us at training@franconnect.com, and we can go ahead and answer your question then and present it on the following week's call. Last but not least, here are our remaining sessions for 2016. We'll be covering Field Ops next week, and then training, support, moving on to our marketing product, CRM and campaign, and then shop and ad builder. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and jump out of my PowerPoint and head into the FranConnect system. We'll go ahead and start with our Hub lesson today. Now, we talk about ways to increase adoption here in many of my lessons because it's the one thing that franchisors just really want to achieve. Your whole purpose of purchasing the Hub is to increase your engagement with your franchisees, and so you're wondering, how do I do that? So I have a couple of things that I want to go ahead and talk to you about. The first way that you can increase user adoption is to make sure every and any document that your franchisees need appear in the library. And you're thinking, well, that's kind of obvious, Liz. But the second step to that is to encourage users to find the information themselves. I remember in a prior career that I had, I was a supervisor and I would go into my manager's office and I would say, how do I get to, or how do I find X? And she would say, well, did you look in the portal? And I know that question is kind of annoying, but it built in me right away the ability and the need to go check the portal before I asked her for help. And so that's the same kind of thing that you're going to do with your franchisee, right? So your first response is going to be, did you check the library? And if they say, yeah, but I can't find it, then you can help them to locate what it is they're looking for. And so that might be a phone call where you navigate with them, or that may be taking them or emailing them a link to the folder where that item is. And so you never want to send the link to the actual item, because when you copy the URL to this item, it's actually just going to give them a copy of the document. And so that's not building that self-sufficiency you want to see in your franchisees. What you're going to want to do is give them the link, and you can copy the link from up here, give them the link to the actual folder so that they have access to this folder, can come into this folder, and then find the document that they're looking for. And so, of course, you're wanting to build self-sufficiency in your franchisees by directing them to the place that they need to go, making sure that all of the documents that they need are here in the library, and then helping them to navigate if they can't find it later. The second thing that I always talk to my franchisors about is the use of FranBuzz as a regular marketing tool. And I think that seems obvious too, because FranBuzz operates like an internal Facebook. However, one of the things I've learned in my time here at FranConnect is that there is a Wednesday afternoon franchising Twitter chat, right? So you can hashtag franchising and be a part of a conversation that's happening on Twitter. Well, Twitter doesn't allow us to sort of regulate the conversation that's happening or keep a really good eye on it, since there are 140 characters and they could be everywhere. And so we don't want to use Twitter for our organization, but we want to use FranBuzz because it allows us to watch for keywords. It allows us to really control the conversation and monitor it. And so we can use FranBuzz in the same way. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m. in our franchise organization, we have a marketing conversation that occurs here on FranBuzz. So what that means is I can come on here and I can say, let's start our marketing conversation. And perhaps this week I have a specific topic. So I'm going to bring up that specific topic and introduce it to the crowd. We'll then leave comments and converse about this. This allows us to not only, as a franchisor, give ideas to our franchisees about perhaps new marketing strategies or a new marketing rollout that we may be doing, but it also allows us to crowdsource ideas from our franchisee base. And so those are the top two ways that I think you can increase adoption, is making sure you use your library as the one and only resource for documents, and then building self-sufficiency in your franchisees by not giving them the answers and telling them to go to the library for the answer. And then the second way is to use FranBuzz as your quote-unquote Twitter chat so that you can create this conversation that happens on a regular basis, where your franchisees can come and reliably see every Wednesday that they can have a conversation with you or your marketing team about some strategies or things that you may be encouraging them to do. So those are two of the top things I encourage franchisors to do. Lines are open now for questions, so please feel free to place them in the chat box and or raise your hand so we can go ahead and have an open discussion. Okay, still waiting for those questions to come in here. Please feel free to raise your hand and or place any questions into the chat box. Okay, so I have a question on the line that's asking, how are forums different from FranBuzz? And that's a really great question. Forums were sort of pre-FranBuzz, which means forums sort of use that old, I always want to say Yahoo, because you can go and ask a question on Google and of course a Yahoo forum will pop up and there'll be crowdsourced answers to the question, right? So forums can achieve a similar objective in that a member of your organization or a franchisee can come on and ask a question and get crowdsourced responses. We recommend FranConnect as an organization, we recommend that you use one or the other, but not both. And that's simply because then you are dividing up the what can be accomplished with one source into two different sources, which will reduce then your adoption. Okay, so because FranBuzz operates more like Facebook, your users are more inclined to use it. It's a more modern platform. It looks more like what they're used to seeing. It's a little bit more intuitive in terms of what they're used to seeing because of their experience with Facebook. And so our recommendation internally is for you to go ahead and use one or the other. Now again, forums are a simple way for you to get community type answers to questions that you have, or for franchisees to get answers to questions that they have. But in our conversation about quote unquote Twitter chat, you can achieve that with FranBuzz as well. So good question, Amy, thank you. What other questions do you have? So commonly when I'm talking to my franchisors when I'm training the hub, we talk about how this homepage is the answer to the question, what do I need to do today? And so this is another way for you to encourage and train your franchisees on the use of the system. If they come into the hub, the homepage is their way of seeing what is new since they last came in, and we can see that up here. They can also see any new messages they have. And remember that messages in the hub are internal messages for the most part. They're used to pass along proprietary information without having that information leave the system, which means it all stays internal. So if you're passing along perhaps a specialized recipe in your restaurant, you don't want that to get out. You can go ahead and send that via messages here. There's also an option in the library, which I can show in just a minute, to make documents public or private, which can then restrict the viewing of those documents to only those users who have access to the FranConnect system. So I can show that in a moment. But nevertheless, the homepage answers that question, what do I need to do today? So if I'm a franchisee and I'm coming here into the system, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, I have some new messages that have come in. My franchisor has sent me an alert, or the system has sent me an alert. Here are some events that are occurring today that I need to make sure that I'm a part of. I can get a preview of my calendar. I can look at any updates that have happened on FranBuzz. I have single-click links to other areas of the system. I'm sorry, to other resources that we use as an organization. And so you can see here that this is really the main spot. In addition, the top stories allow us as a franchisor to produce videos and or documents or add pictures of testimonials that may have occurred at one of our locations right front and center, so that that experience can be had by all of our franchisees. And so again, this is the answer to the question, what do I need to do today? Where does my focus need to be? And so that's how I like to introduce this page, because as a franchisee myself, if there's anything coming from the franchisor, this is the place where I'm going to go for that information. So I said I was going to show something from the library, so let me go ahead and show that. Please feel free to include any questions that you have as I go ahead and speak. So there's a question on the line, and I'm sorry, I'm deviating from my answer to my library thing, and I'll do that in just a moment. But can the calendar be used separately for the franchisor's home office team and the franchisee team? So you can choose who you include in your calendar when you use the calendar. So if you're creating, for example, a meeting which would include an audience, like a group, and I want to choose the participants who are a part of that, what will happen is that the system will present me with all of the users to include corporate users, franchise users, and regional users. So I can separate out my use of the calendar or my invites to other folks using these other user types. So if I want to invite other corporate users, I can, and that would be separate from inviting my franchise users. Does that answer your question, Wendy? Okay, so back to the library. If we go ahead and click on one of our folders here, we can go ahead and add a document to the folder. When I choose to add a document to the folder, at the bottom of the page is the option for accessibility. If I choose to make this document public, that means the link can be shared between my franchisee and even sent from my franchisee to someone out of the system, and then that document can be seen externally. Now what that means is, and I have a very relevant example of this, if we as an organization, we're a restaurant concept and we are doing a buy a dozen cookies, get half a dozen free, right? That's a public document. It's a coupon. It's something that people need to bring in. So our desire for it to remain private you know, isn't very great. We want that to be out in the public. We want people to be able to find it. We want our franchisees to be able to share it and be able to show it and be able to send it out and whatever. So that would be a public document. That's a coupon. That's something that we want people to redeem, and we want to increase revenue at our stores. On the other hand, the recipe to make that batch of cookies is private to our organization. We don't need that recipe getting out because we don't want our Pinterest fans making our cookies on Pinterest, right? And then those cookies don't get sold as much because people can make them at home. So in the case of the recipe, that becomes a protected document by which anybody who shares that link will need access to the FranConnect system in order to get a copy of that document. And so make sure as you're adding documents to the library that you're aware of whether or not you want this to be public so it can be shared externally, or protected where they have to have access to the FranConnect system with user login details in order to have order to access that document. Other questions? So at the beginning of the course, we talked a little bit about adoption. And I want to show you another feature here in the system that can help direct your franchisees back into the system. So in the admin section, under the hub, there is a configure what's new email. This allows you to enable an email that goes out from the system that's received by your franchisees that lets them know what's new here in the system, and then it gives them a portion or a little bit of what's happened in the system since they were last here. Or in this case, the email goes out every 15 days, so it's going to give them some basics about what's happened in the last 15 days here in the hub. You can do 1 day, every 7 days, and 15 days. And so creating this or enabling this here in the system will allow that email to go out, and then if they happen to see an article or something that they like, they can come back and reference it here in the system as well. So there's a question on the line about Opener. We did previously have an Opener session, but Wendy, you're free to ask your question about Opener, and if we're able to answer it here today on the line, we'll be happy to do so. Okay, Wendy, that's great. So does anybody else have any questions about the hub? Okay, so before we end our call, let's go ahead and take a look at news. One of the things that I want to show you that sometimes we don't realize is news feeds. The news feeds area actually allows us to include RSS feeds here in the system. Some of the recommendations that I give when I train this course are for you to include RSS feeds for the franchising industry in addition to RSS feeds that may be pertinent to your specific industry. We learned at Fran Connection from Aziz Hashim that the franchising industry is under attack. And so as a franchisee, I'm always interested in what's happening both in my state and nationally. And so if you want to include RSS feeds that are specific to franchising, then you can keep your franchisees up to date on what's happening in franchising when those things may also impact them. And so to add RSS feeds, you would do that from the admin section. Click on the hub, and up in Stories, RSS feeds, and homepage, you can go ahead and add your RSS feeds. And RSS feeds typically come as just a hyperlink, and so you can do a simple Google search for franchising RSS feeds, and if any pull up that you're interested in, you can go ahead and add an RSS feed, and when you do, you're just simply copying and pasting the feed that pops up in the browser window here into the top. And then you'll place a description, make it accessible, and click submit. There's more instructions here on the right-hand side in case you have trouble with it, but I think this is a really good idea for making sure that your franchisees are staying on top of franchising news that may be impacting them and their business. So I'd love to answer some more questions about the hub. I hope I'm giving you some good ideas today about things you can do in your version of the hub, but I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you have. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes. We'll give it just 2 more minutes, and then if you all decide that there are no more questions, well, you can go ahead and have about 30 minutes back of your afternoon. So there's a question on the line. Is there a way to use the hub to upload documents that require the franchisee to complete, or should this be done in another area? Yeah, I think the library is the best part or the best area for this. So if you have a particular document that you need franchisees to complete, you can go ahead and add it in the library. From the admin section, you could add a required documents folder, and when you click then on that folder, you can add documents to it. One of the options that you can go ahead one of the options that you can go ahead and do is make it a recommended document and place an expiration date on this particular document. And when you make it recommended, that means that it's going to show up then on the home page And there's an area for recommended documents as well that'll pop up here with library documents. It'll have something that says recommended. So you can go ahead then and say, and send an email out or send an alert out from Hub saying, hey, we've added a document to the library. You can easily find it from your home page, and you're going to need to go ahead and sign and return that. So there is a way to edit existing documents that are already in the library. That's another great question. So if you come into a document that's already been uploaded, you can go ahead and modify that. And you can upload a newer version of it. This is how we at FranConnect also use the Hub, and this is how we do it internally. So you can upload a newer version. Does that answer your question? Oh, okay. Edit existing documents without reloading it itself is the question. Not that I'm aware of. Because the document that's coming into the library is a Word document or a PDF, they have to be then edited outside in those respective software products and then added back in. But you don't actually have to like add it as a new document. You would just come here and then re-upload it into the area where you already have it. So there's a question on the line, is there any way for us to have fillable forms for the franchisees to fill out, whether in the library or elsewhere? So right now, the only place where we have a sort of fillable form type option is in sales, where we actually have DocuSign integration. I am not sure if it's on the roadmap to add DocuSign integration to Information Manager, which I believe is a request that I've placed in our idea portal. But I can check the roadmap for that for those of you who have an interest in this particular thing. But right now, here in sales, we have what's called DocuSign integration, and Sherry just reminded me, and so here we have DocuSign. And Sherry just reminded me that we do have web forms now in Information Manager. So the answer is yes. It just didn't glaringly come out in my brain. Thanks, Sherry, for that. So in Information Manager, we have newly added in this most recent Milky Way release. So Adam, thanks for the question. In this most recent release, we've added web forms. So in order to get to that, you go underneath your name to admin, and along the left-hand side, you'll come into Info Manager, and there's now a Manage Web Form Generator. And so some of the things that you can create, I've actually created one here for an insurance policy update. So I can create a web form here in Information Manager, and when the policy for the location is about to expire, I'll get a notification in Information Manager, and then I can actually send the hyperlink to the insurance policy update to the franchisee to automatically, and I'm just getting there here, to automatically update their insurance policy information themselves. And so we not only have the same iframe embed code that we have for sales, but we also have the URL. And so you can simply copy and paste this, control copy and paste it into a template that you send to your franchisee. And I have an example of that here in the system. Thanks for the reminder, Sherry, and great question, Adam. So under our email templates, I have a template that says insurance expiration letter, and there's a hyperlink right here. You can see that once they renew their policy, they can click on this hyperlink and they can be provided with the link to the insurance expiration letter. In this particular one, I've linked out to something I had previously. It's training environment. But anyway, you can create these templates and then link out to that web form so that your franchisee can complete it. Good question. Does that answer the question, Adam, for you? Okay, wonderful. Any other questions here on the line? Okay, well, if there are no more questions, we do appreciate your participation here in the lesson today. Thank you for your time and hopping on. This session will be available after today's date and via recording. So if there's no more questions, you can go ahead and go. Thanks so much for your time and have a great day.